Clara Bellamy knew the weight of every honest thing in Mercy Ford. A dry flour sack weighed 49 pounds. A keg of horseshoe nails weighed more than it looked. 2 loaves of salt bread balanced neatly against a pound of coffee and 3 silver dimes. A lie had no proper weight at all. That was why the paper on her father's desk frightened her more than the bruise beneath her sleeve. It was cheap legal stock. 3 pages of measured language describing freight obligations, household service, clerical duties, repayment schedules, and penalties for abandonment. The words were arranged so neatly that a careless reader might mistake them for respectable. At the bottom of the last page was Clara's name. The signature looked like hers. Almost. The capital C leaned too far forward. The final stroke in Bellamy curled beneath the line, something Clara had not done since she was 14, and her mother had made her copy invoices until her hand stopped wandering. Whoever had forged it remembered an old version of her writing, or had been shown one. Clara read the final paragraph again. The contracted party shall report to the Voss Consolidated Works at Black Vein Camp no later than sundown, Friday, October 3rd, 1879. Friday was tomorrow. Below her, a pan struck the kitchen floor. Her father cursed. A bottle rolled against a chair leg. Clara folded the paper along its existing creases, returned it beneath the freight receipts, and closed the desk. The trick to surviving Amos Bellamy's drinking was never to let him know what you knew before you had decided what to do with it. She went downstairs. The Mercy Ford stagehouse stood where the East Road crossed the Bitterroot freight trail. Coaches stopped for fresh teams, hot food, and news. For the last 3 years, however, the station had become a wound that refused to close. Clara kept it alive. She baked before dawn, tallied freight by noon, served supper at dusk, and balanced the ledgers after everyone else had gone to bed. Amos handled negotiations when he was sober, which was less often each season. That morning he stood in the kitchen wearing yesterday's shirt. A copper pan lay beside his boot. "You dropped that," Clara said. "I know what I dropped." She bent for it. His hand closed around her wrist before she reached the floor. His grip found the bruise he had left 2 nights earlier with cruel accuracy. Whether by intention or habit, she could not tell. "Where were you?" "Upstairs." "Doing what?" "Checking the westbound receipts." His pale eyes searched her face. "Nothing missing?" There it was. Clara let one breath pass. "The Barton invoice is short by $12. His fingers tightened. "I did not ask about Barton." "No, you asked whether anything was missing." For a moment she watched anger rise in him, then shame, then anger again because it was easier to carry. The stage bell clanged outside. Amos released her. "See to the passengers." Clara rubbed her wrist only after his back was turned. 6 rounds of dough waited beneath linen on the work table. She scored the tops with a razor, slid them into the oven, and stepped into the dining room as the eastbound coach rolled into the yard under a gray sky. She served coffee and ham while the stable boys changed the team, took payment, and entered it in the public ledger. The forged signature waited upstairs. Friday, sundown. Black Vein Camp lay 40 miles north, where the peaks shut out daylight early. Gideon Voss owned the silver claim, the bunkhouses, the company store, the freight contracts, and the paper money used to pay the people who worked for him. Men went there owing $50 and left 2 years later owing $80. Women did not leave as often. Clara had seen their names in the station ledgers. Lydia Snow, kitchen service. June Mercer, laundry. Etta Bloom, domestic quarters. Each had been listed as freight accompaniment, as if the women were crates requiring blankets and meals. Clara had copied every name into a smaller book. Her mother had taught her that any number worth writing once was worth verifying twice. Near noon, he said, "Voss's freight agent may come tomorrow." Clara continued slicing carrots. "For the winter shipment? For an arrangement." "What arrangement?" "Business. Then you can put it in the ledger." His chair scraped. "Not every matter in this house belongs in your books." "No, only the matters that cost us money." Silence followed. Amos entered the kitchen. She smelled whiskey before he reached the table. "I have carried this station longer than you've been alive," he said. "You inherited it." His palm hit the table hard enough to jump the knife. Clara did not move. "You think because you can add columns, you understand what it takes to keep a roof standing? Teams, repairs, feed, taxes? I know exactly what they cost. I write it down." His face changed. "Just enough." "You signed something," Clara said. Amos looked toward the doorway as if another person might enter and spare him from being the man in the room. "What did you sign?" His mouth worked before sound came. Voss cleared the note. The spring advance was $180. There were penalties. "How much?" He looked away. Clara placed the knife flat on the table. "How much did you owe him?" Amos brought a bottle from beneath his coat and drank. 630. The number struck harder than his hand ever had. Clara had balanced every visible account in the station. $630 did not exist in any ledger she had seen. "You kept a second book." "I handled it." "You hid it." "I handled it." "You forged my name." He flinched. That was the confession. The wind pressed against the windows. Somewhere in the stable, a horse kicked a board. "What does Gideon Voss believe he bought?" Clara asked. "No one bought you." The speed of the answer made it worse. "What does the contract require?" "Clerical work. Kitchen supervision. You already do both." "At Black Vein." "For a time." "How long?" "The debt determines the term." "His debt," she said. "Your signature. My term. I was trying to save this place. You traded me for it." "No." He stepped closer. "I made an arrangement. You will have wages, a roof, respectable duties. Paid in Voss paper." Amos stopped. "Will he charge me for the bed?" No answer. "For meals? For the wagon that takes me there?" He said the account would be fair. Clara looked at her father and understood that betrayals committed in weakness could ruin a life as completely as betrayals committed in hatred. "When does he come?" "Tomorrow." "What hour?" "Before sunset." The room sharpened around her. Flour along the stove, Amos's thumb pressed against the bottle glass. "You will give me the contract." "I can't." "You will. It has already been witnessed." "By whom?" "Edwin Pike, Voss's lawyer." "And Boyd Rusk?" Amos's gaze dropped. "Will he be coming too?" "He is an escort." Clara almost smiled. The expression felt strange on her face. "For whom?" Amos set the bottle down. "Do not make this uglier than it is." She held his gaze until he turned away. She picked up the knife and finished the carrots. Work did not become less necessary when the world tilted beneath it. Until then, some foolish piece of her had expected Amos to call the contract a threat or misunderstanding. Instead, he had told her to pack. By 2, light snow had begun to fall. It melted in the yard, darkening the dirt in scattered coins. The northbound freight wagon arrived late, its driver swearing about the grade beyond Mercy Cut. Clara brought him coffee and checked the manifest while hired men unloaded lamp oil, flour, salt, blasting caps, and 3 sealed crates marked for black vein. One crate was entered at 160 pounds. It took 4 men to move. Clara watched the wagon springs and thought, 210, perhaps more. She wrote nothing in the public ledger. When no one was looking, she marked the number in the small book beneath her apron. At 3:30, the front door opened and Winter came in with a man. He was tall enough that the lintel seemed low above him. Snow lay across the shoulders of his buckskin coat. A dark beard covered most of his face, threaded with the first gray. He carried a rifle pointed toward the floor and a canvas pack over one shoulder. He looked like someone who had spent enough winters beyond roads to know which mistakes could not be corrected. His eyes crossed the room. Front door, back passage, stove, Amos behind the counter, Clara with the ledger open. Only then did he remove his hat. "Coffee?" she asked. "If it's hot." "It is." He chose the chair with the wall behind it. Clara set a mug before him. A pale scar disappeared beneath his collar, and his gloves were mended with careful, ugly stitches. "Food? What keeps?" "Bread, dried apples, smoked venison. Enough for 5 days. 2 loaves, 3 pounds of meat, 1 sack of apples. You'll want more coffee above the snow line." His gray-green eyes lifted. "How much more?" "1 pound, unless you enjoy running out." Something near his mouth shifted. "1 pound." She packed the supplies while he watched her adjust the scale. "Beam pulls left," she said. "I didn't ask." "No, but you noticed." He laid silver on the table. "Too much." Clara counted out the excess and pushed it back. "Most places keep the mistake," he said. "Most places don't keep books worth reading." Amos made a warning sound from behind the counter. Clara ignored him. The stranger returned the coins to his pocket. "What name goes in the account?" she asked. "Cade." She waited. "Rowan Cade." She wrote it down. His attention fell to her hand, then to the edge of her cuff where Amos's grip had pulled the fabric back. Clara lowered her wrist beneath the table. Rowan said nothing. That, more than a question would have, made her look at him again. Outside, a freight man shouted that the North Trace would close if the snow kept building. "You came down from Bitterroot?" Clara asked. "East Shoulder. Across Slate Pass?" "This morning." "How deep?" 6 inches at the marker. More coming. Black vein lay beyond Mercy Cut. Snow would slow travel. Not enough, but perhaps some. Rowan reached for his coffee. As his sleeve shifted, Clara saw a stamped leather tag tied to his pack. Voss Consolidated Works, Mountain Guide Access. Her gaze paused on it. Rowan followed her eyes. "That's expired. You worked for Voss." "Once." Amos spoke from the counter. "Cade." The name came out differently now, fear searching its memory. Rowan turned. Amos had gone pale beneath the whiskey flush. "You're Miriam Cade's brother," he said. The room changed. Rowan did not move, but something in him closed with the smoothness of a trap springing. Clara looked between them. "Miriam worked at Black Vein," Amos said. "She was kept there." Amos glanced at Clara, only for an instant. Rowan saw it. His gaze moved to her ledger, her hidden wrist, the flower on her apron, then toward the stairs leading to Amos's office. "What did you sign?" he asked. Amos stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. "That is none of your concern." Rowan remained seated. "I wasn't asking you." Clara felt her pulse once in her throat. The snow whispered against the windows. She could deny everything, protect Amos's secret for one more night, and meet Voss's men alone tomorrow. Instead, she tore a blank strip from the back of her small notebook and wrote 3 lines. "Labor contract. My signature forged. Black Vein Camp. Collection before sundown tomorrow." She slid the paper across the table. Rowan read it once. Then he untied the leather permit from his pack and turned it over. A circular brand had been burned into the back, a pickaxe crossed with a key. The same seal stamped at the bottom of Clara's contract. Rowan's face lost what little warmth it had held. "This mark doesn't belong on a work agreement," he said. "What does it belong on?" He looked toward Amos. For the first time since entering the station, the mountain man's stillness carried something more dangerous than caution. "A holding contract," he said. "Voss used them at Black Vein before. The debt isn't meant to be paid." Outside, afternoon light was already failing behind the snow. Clara folded her hands over the bruise on her wrist. "What happened to your sister?" Rowan Cade looked at the seal between them. When he answered, his voice was low. "She signed the same kind of paper." Rowan did not touch the paper again. A knot of pine split in the stove. Amos stood at the counter, his face slack like a man who had finally heard the true name of his bargain. Clara kept her eyes on Rowan. What happened after she signed? They charged Miriam for the wagon to camp, then for her room, blankets, meals, medicine, and the guards who walked her to work. His voice remained level, which made every word worse. Her wages came in Voss notes. The company store accepted them below their printed value. Every month, the debt grew. And when she refused, they added penalties. Amos reached for the bottle. Rowan looked at him. Amos stopped before his fingers closed around the glass. "Did Miriam get out?" Clara asked. "Yes." The answer was too quick to be whole. "How?" "I went in after her." Clara glanced at the old permit tied to his pack. "That was your way inside." "It was." "Voss let you leave?" "He needed me alive. His ore wagons were breaking axles above Slate Pass. I knew the winter crossings." Amos gave a bitter laugh. "So you worked for him too?" Rowan turned his head. "Long enough to learn what he was." The laugh died. Clara studied him. He spoke like a man sorting tools, naming each according to use. "What are my choices?" Amos straightened. "Your choice is to stay until Pike arrives." "I will speak to him." "You already did. This is my station. It is Voss's collateral." Clara looked back at Rowan. "My choices. You can run. With $4.60, Voss controls the North Road, and the sheriff eats at his hotel every Sunday. Running buys distance," Rowan said. "Not a clean name. Pike will call it breach of contract and send notices ahead. So I arrive elsewhere already accused." "Yes. What else?" "You can challenge the signature before Judge Hale in Fort Redstone." "How far?" 2 hard days in clear weather, 3 in this." "Would she stop tomorrow's collection?" "Not without seeing the paper and hearing you swear to the forgery." "Then we leave tonight." "The upper road is taking snow. It may already be too dangerous for a horse." Amos seized on that. "You hear him. You cannot go." Clara turned. You did not hesitate to send me 40 miles north, on a freight road, to a man who owns the road." Amos had no answer. Rowan said, "There is a third choice." The room tightened around the words. "A contract made under your father's household authority can be enforced quickly because Pike has local witnesses and Voss owns the clerk who records freight labor." Rowan folded the strip Clara had written on. "A separate household claim complicates that. Say it plainly. If you marry before Pike files the collection notice, he cannot remove you as your father's dependent without first challenging the marriage." Amos made a sound as if struck. Clara did not look away. "Marry whom?" "Someone outside Voss's accounts. Someone with land, a recorded claim, and no debt he can purchase. Someone such as you." "Yes." Amos crossed the room so fast his chair went over. "No." Rowan rose. He did not lift the rifle. He did not need to. "You will not tie yourself to some mountain savage because you are angry with me," Amos said. Clara felt the last of her fear turn clean. "You tied me to Gideon Voss because you were afraid of losing a building. I am your father. You remembered that too late." Amos swung toward Rowan. "Get out." Rowan put on his hat. Clara's heart dropped before she understood why. Then he said, "I'll wait in the stable." At the door, he stopped beside her. "This is not an answer you owe me. It is one way to buy time, nothing more. Would it be legal? Legal enough to force Pike into a courtroom instead of a wagon?" "That was not my question." His eyes met hers. "The marriage would be legal. What would you expect? Terms. You would let me set them. You are the one risking more." He left. White wind entered and vanished when the door shut. Amos seized Clara's upper arm. "You will not go out there." She looked down at his hand. "Take it off me. You do not know that man. I know what you signed. He could be worse. He could. That is why I will ask questions before I decide." "You are not deciding anything." Clara pulled free. When he reached again, she caught the heavy rolling pin from the work table and held it between them. Neither moved. Her mother had sanded its handles smooth. Clara had used it for thousands of biscuits and pie crusts. In her hands, it became something else without ceasing to be what it was. "You would strike your own father?" "If he tries to hold me for the man he sold me to." His expression broke, not into remorse, but injury. "I did not sell you. How much of the debt disappears when I report to Black Vein?" He looked at the floor. "How much?" "All of it. $630. The price settled between them. Clara lowered the rolling pin. "I will finish the bread. Then I am going to the stable. You walk out that door, you do not come back." She looked around the kitchen, her mother's stove, the ledger shelf she had repaired, the table scarred by knives and hot pans. The room held almost every useful skill she possessed, and none of the safety a home should give. "You already arranged that." She finished the 6 loaves because paid work did not become less necessary when a life changed. While Amos searched upstairs, she cooled the bread and entered the storage room. Behind the flour bins stood a narrow tin box. She took out her savings, her mother's brass key, 2 pencils, and the private ledger wrapped in oilcloth. At the back of the shelf sat a square flour box with a warped lid, her mother's box. Inside lay a dried lump of starter in a ceramic jar and a thin black book with no label. Clara touched the cover but did not open it. Not yet. She packed both. Rowan was tightening a strap on his horse when she entered the stable. The dark bay gelding stood patiently in the center aisle, steam lifting from his nostrils. "You came," Rowan said. "I said I would ask questions." He stepped away from the horse. Clara set her bag on a feed barrel but kept one hand on the strap. "Where is your claim?" "East shoulder of Bitterroot, above Elk Run." "How many miles?" 28 by the Winter Trail. "Nearest neighbor?" "May Donnelly, 5 miles below. Her brother Owen winters there." "Who can prove you are who you say?" "The land clerk in Fort Redstone, May and Owen." "The Cedar Gap Trading Post, Deputy Marshal Larkin." "Does Voss own any part of your land?" "No." "Do you owe him money?" "No." "Anyone?" $32 to the Cedar Gap smith for a stovepipe and 2 traps. Clara appreciated the precision. "How much money do you have?" His eyebrows moved. "If I am considering joining my legal standing to yours, I will know whether you can feed 2 people through winter." $209 in coin, 43 in trade credit, and furs worth perhaps another 100. Food? Meat. 6 weeks of flour, beans, corn, coffee, and a half-full root cellar. House? Cabin. Main room, loft, storage room at the back. Does the back room have a door? Yes. Does it lock? A latch. From which side? He understood. Inside. Clara released a breath. "What work would you expect?" "Whatever we agree." "You mentioned terms. You set them." The simplicity made her suspicious. "Why?" "Because you are risking more." Snow drummed on the roof. His hands remained visible and away from her. "If I marry you, you do not own my wages." "Agreed." "I keep my money and papers." "Yes." "I have a room with a door that latches from inside. You do not enter without permission unless the cabin is burning." "Agreed." "You do not touch me because a magistrate has said words over us." "No." The answer came without offense. "I cook because I choose to contribute, not because you purchased a wife." "Yes." "I keep the household accounts, and I see every account. No hidden debts, no second book." At that, Rowan glanced toward the stage house. "No second book. If I decide to leave after Pike's claim is stopped, you do not prevent me. I'll take you wherever you choose, weather permitting. I decide when the weather permits. You decide when it looks safe. I decide whether the trail will kill the horses. That sounds like preventing me." "That sounds like not freezing to death to prove a point." She studied him. "If we disagree, May Donnelly decides." A faint line appeared between his brows. "All right. You agree quickly. I know May. She'll call me a fool when necessary." "Good." Clara drew a pencil and folded freight sheet from her bag. Rowan watched her smooth it on the barrel. "You want this written." "I want everything written." She began with the date. October 2nd, 1879. Her hand did not shake. She wrote each condition in plain language, leaving space between them. Rowan answered when she asked for exact wording and kept silent when she did not. Halfway through, he said, "Add 1." Clara looked up. "If Voss's contract is broken and you want the marriage ended, I pay the filing cost." She wrote it. "Another," Rowan said. "Your name. What about it? You decide whether to use Cade." For the first time since finding the forged contract, Clara did not know what to say. Amos had given away her labor beneath a copied version of her name. Voss intended to replace it with a number in an account. Rowan offered his as a shield while leaving hers in her hands. She bent over the paper. Clara Bellamy may use the name Clara Cade for legal protection without surrendering Bellamy in her books, wages, property, or correspondence. She read it aloud. "Good," Rowan said. The stable door opened. Amos stood in the frame, snow silvering his hair. He held the contract in one hand and an unraised revolver in the other. "Come inside. Put the gun down. I am not speaking to you as a child. You have not spoken to me as a daughter in years." Rowan shifted toward his rifle. "Do not," Clara said. He stopped. His obedience seemed to frighten Amos more than defiance would have. "You think this man is giving you freedom?" Amos asked. "He wants a woman in his cabin." "Maybe. That is why there are terms. You cannot bargain your way into knowing a man." "No, but terms tell me what he does when I say no." Amos looked at Rowan. "And if I say no?" Clara answered. "You already signed your answer." The revolver lowered. Amos's anger leaked away, leaving an older man who was still dangerous and still afraid. "Pike will ruin me. He was going to ruin you after he took me. He promised. You know better." Truth reached him then. The station was collateral, Clara was labor, and the debt was the chain. "Give me the contract," she said. "If Pike learns I gave it to you, he will know when I do not enter his wagon." At last, Amos laid the pages on the barrel. Clara took them. "Where did you get the signature sample?" He went still. "My school copybook," she said, "the one Mama kept." He could not meet her eyes. "Pike asked for proof you were willing, and you gave him a dead woman's memory of my hand. I thought, no, you surrendered." Amos looked as if he wanted to strike her, beg her, or accuse her. He did none. "I cannot stop Rusk when he comes," he said. "I know. That is why you should go before morning." It was late and nowhere near enough, but it was the first thing he had said that placed her survival ahead of the station. Clara felt no forgiveness, only recognition. "I am not leaving tonight. The chapel register opens at 7. The circuit clerk will be there before the West coach." Rowan glanced at her. "You planned the hour." "I keep the schedule." She turned the agreement toward him. "Read it." He read every line. Then he took Clara's pencil and wrote, "I agree to these terms without condition. Rowan Elias Cade." He passed the pencil back. Clara read the page once more. She thought of the false signature upstairs, the childish curve Pike had copied, a version of her chosen by men who needed her consent to exist only as ink. This signature would be different. She wrote slowly. Clara Ruth Bellamy. No curl beneath the line, no borrowed hand. She set down the pencil. "If the register opens at 7, Rowan said, we should be there at 6:30. Clara folded their agreement around the forged contract and placed both inside her bag. Then she met his eyes. "All right," she said. "I will marry you in the morning." Clara slept for 43 minutes. She knew because the stagehouse clock struck 2 when she lay down, and 3 before she finished deciding whether to rise. Wind worried the loose pane near the wardrobe, tapping it against the frame. She dressed by lantern light. 2 work dresses went into the canvas bag, along with wool stockings, her mother's thimble, the dried starter, the black book, and the private ledger wrapped in oilcloth. At the bottom of the wardrobe she found her mother's gray shawl and folded it over her arm. She left the family photograph on the wall. That family had existed, Its existence did not obligate her to remain inside its ruins. Downstairs, Amos sat at the kitchen table with both hands around an empty cup. The revolver was gone. Clara set flour, salt, and starter on the work table. "You are baking?" he asked. "The West coach will still arrive. You will be gone. The passengers will still be hungry." She began measuring. Amos watched her work. His face was gray with exhaustion, and for once, there was no bottle in sight. "I can tell Pike I was drunk when I signed." "You were. He may let me amend the agreement." "He will let you make another one. I could say your signature was forged without my knowledge." Clara looked up. "You provided the copybook." His fingers tightened around the cup. "I could lie." "You already did." The words landed without heat. Anger had burned down to something harder. She kneaded while snow pressed beneath the back door. "Your mother kept that black book," Amos said. Clara's hand stopped. He nodded toward her bag. "She wrote freight numbers, names sometimes." "Why?" "She said Voss's tallies, changed between Mercy Ford and Black Vein." "You knew she suspected him." "I knew." "And you borrowed from him anyway. After she died, there was no one else. There was me. You were 19. I was already running the station." Amos turned the empty cup between his palms. "I did not know how to ask my daughter to save me. So you made her payment instead." He closed his eyes. For one instant, Clara saw the man from the photograph, not restored, not forgiven, merely buried beneath the choices that had followed. "Did Voss know about the book?" "No." "Pike?" "No." "You are certain?" "As certain as I can be about anything now." That was not certainty, but it was the best he had. Clara shaped 12 travel loaves instead of broad rounds. 6 she wrapped for herself and Rowan. 6 she left in the bread chest. At 5 she opened the public ledger to a clean page and entered the remaining flour, salt, coffee, lamp oil, horse feed, and cash drawer balance. Beneath the figures she wrote, "Accounts transferred to Amos Bellamy at 5:17 in the morning. No shortages recorded." Then she signed her name. Amos read the entry over her shoulder. "You think a clean ledger matters after this?" "It matters to me." At 6, Rowan knocked on the front door. He had brought a second horse, a chestnut mare with a white mark above one eye. Both animals were saddled for cold travel. A rolled blanket and snowshoes were tied behind Clara's saddle. "The mare's Juniper," Rowan said. "She doesn't like hard hands." "Neither do I." "Then you'll suit." He took Clara's bag only after she handed it to him. Amos stood beneath the station awning without a coat. Snow gathered in his hair. A sound carried through the storm. Harness bells. Not from the chapel road, from the south. Rowan mounted and looked through the snow. 2 horses, maybe 3. Pike was early. Clara counted distance by sound. The bells were muffled, not yet at the bridge. "Can we reach the chapel before them?" "Yes," Rowan said, "but they'll see the road." Amos looked toward the bridge, then back at Clara. "Use the west pasture. The fence is down by the cottonwoods. It joins the church lane behind the cemetery. The hidden route would keep them out of sight for half a mile." "You'll have to delay them," Clara said. Amos swallowed. "Yes. Pike will know you helped." "Yes." It was not an apology. It was action. Clara mounted Juniper. The mare shifted beneath her, alert but steady. Amos came to the stirrup. He lifted one hand as if to touch Clara's boot, then let it fall. "I was a better man when your mother was alive. She should not have had to stay alive to make you one." His face folded around the truth. She turned Juniper toward the barn. Behind her, Rowan said, "Bellamy." Amos looked at him. "If they hurt you, get to May Donnelly's." "You offering me shelter too?" "I'm offering directions." Then Rowan followed Clara into the white dark. They crossed the pasture at a careful trot. Snow hid the broken ground, and Juniper tested each step before trusting it. At the cottonwoods, Clara found the gap by memory and led them through. The chapel tower appeared beyond the cemetery. Behind them, the harness bells reached the station yard. A man shouted. Amos answered, his words lost in the wind. Clara did not turn. Martin Vale, the chapel clerk, was carrying firewood when they rode up. He was a narrow young man whose spectacles fogged with his breath. "Miss Bellamy, we need the marriage register." His mouth opened. Rowan dismounted. "Now, Mr. Vale." "The minister has not arrived." "You can witness a civil declaration," Clara said. "The circuit authorization is posted beside your desk." Vale blinked. "You read it?" "I read everything posted where passengers wait." Inside, the chapel was scarcely warmer than the yard. Vale stirred the stove, lit 2 lamps, and unlocked the register cabinet. "I need full names, ages, places of residence, and proof neither party is presently married." Rowan Elias Cade, 37, Bitterroot, East Shoulder, never married. Clara Ruth Bellamy, 24, Mercy Ford. Vale examined Rowan's land claim copy and Clara's birth entry in the station Bible. Then Clara laid their private agreement beside the register. "This is not part of the marriage record," Vale said. "It is part of ours." He read the separate room provision and colored. "I cannot certify all these conditions. You are witnessing the signatures and the time." Vale pushed his spectacles higher. "Is someone coercing you, Miss Bellamy?" "No." "Mr. Cade?" "No." Vale looked again at the agreement. "Is this a marriage in fact or only in law?" Clara answered before Rowan could. "It is a marriage entered for protection. What it becomes is not the clerk's business." "No, ma'am." The brass handbell at the outer door rang. Someone was outside. Through the frost-edged window, Clara saw Edwin Pike beneath the chapel eave. Boyd Rusk waited behind him, with one hand on his saddle horn. A third rider held the reins of an empty horse. Clara's horse, they had assumed. Pike rang again. "We are not finished," Clara said. Vale whispered, "He is counsel for half the county. Then he understands recorded time." Rowan moved toward the door. Clara caught his sleeve. "No gun unless they draw first." "I know. I need you alive after the paperwork." His eyes held hers. "All right." He stepped outside and shut the door. Pike's voice carried through the wood. "Mr. Cade, this is an unexpected obstruction." "Morning, Pike. We have lawful business with Miss Bellamy." "So do I." Rusk said something too low to hear. Then Rowan replied, "Try the door and you'll lose the hand." Vale dropped his pen. Clara placed it back between his fingers. "Right," he wrote. The declaration was brief. Vale read each line while the men outside argued over household authority and contract priority. Clara listened for changes in tone. Pike remained smooth. Rusk did not. The door shuddered once under a heavy fist. Vale stopped. "Continue," Clara said. "Miss Bellamy, if that door opens before this is entered, Boyd Rusk will put me on the empty horse outside. Continue. Vale believed her. He hurried through Rowan's vow. From outside came a steady answer. I do. Vale looked at Clara. Do you, Clara Ruth Bellamy, enter this union freely and accept Rowan Elias Cade as your lawful husband? Freely. The word mattered more than husband. Her forged name had been taken from a child's copybook and pressed beneath terms she had never seen. This name would be written in a room she chose, under conditions she authored, while men waited outside to discover whether her will could move faster than theirs. I do. Vale turned the register. Clara signed first. Clara Ruth Bellamy. She paused, then added, recorded also as Clara Bellamy Cade. Rowan entered when Vale called him. Snow covered his shoulders. A thin line of blood marked one knuckle. Whose? Clara asked. Mine. Doorframe. He signed. Vale entered the time. 7:11 a.m. Clara set the forged labor contract beside the marriage line. Stamp a copy. The seal came down with a hard metal click. The door opened before the ink dried. Edwin Pike stepped inside, wearing a fine black coat unsuited to the weather. His hair was neat, his gloves clean. Boyd Rusk filled the doorway behind him. Pike's eyes moved from Clara to the register to Rowan. Miss Bellamy, he said, your father has created considerable confusion. My father created a forgery. That is a serious allegation. So is transporting a woman under a signature she did not write. Pike smiled without warmth. You are distressed. Mr. Voss is prepared to be generous about the misunderstanding. I am not distressed. You married a stranger in a freezing chapel before breakfast. Yes. His gaze shifted to their agreement. What is that? Something you should have obtained before writing terms in my name. Pike stepped toward the table. Rowan moved between them. Pike stopped. Marriage does not erase a prior obligation. No, Clara said, but it forces you to prove the obligation before someone who does not work for Voss. You assume such a person exists. I assume you would not be standing in a chapel at dawn if you were certain no one did. The smile left his face. Rusk pushed away from the doorway. Enough. Rowan did not turn. You came for Miss Bellamy. There isn't one here. Pike's eyes sharpened. A changed name is not freedom. Clara took the stamped copy and tucked it inside her coat. No, but it is time. She lifted her bag. Pike changed. Your father's debt remains. That is between my father and the man who lent it. The station will be seized. Clara felt the blow exactly where he intended. Her mother's stove, the ledger shelf, the sign Amos had raised when she was a child. Pike watched her face. Return with us, he said softly, and Mr. Voss may still consider the account settled. There was the bargain stripped of respectable language. Clara stepped close enough to see melted snow along his collar. You brought an empty horse because you expected my answer not to matter. Pike said nothing. It matters now. She passed him. Rusk blocked the doorway. Rowan's hand settled near his rifle, but Clara did not stop. Move, she said. Rusk looked down at her. You think that paper makes you hard to carry? No, I think it makes carrying me kidnapping in front of a clerk, a landholder, and your own attorney. Vale swallowed behind her. Pike considered the witnesses in the open register. His reputation depended on crimes remaining difficult to name. "Let her pass," he said. Rusk remained still for one breath, then stepped aside. Outside, the snow had eased. Pale morning showed above the eastern hills. Rowan brought Juniper to the chapel step. Clara mounted without help. Pike watched from beneath the eave. "This delays Mr. Voss," he called. "It does not defeat him." Clara settled her boots in the stirrups. "Then tell him to improve his books." Something flickered in Pike's expression. Small, quick, real. Clara filed it away. They turned north, away from the main freight road, and onto the timber trace climbing above Mercy Ford. At the cemetery ridge, Clara looked back once. The stage house stood beyond the cottonwoods, its roof white with snow. 3 dark figures occupied the yard. One was Amos. The other 2 had come to collect what he had promised. He looked very small between them. Clara did not feel free. Not yet. Freedom was too large a word for a stamped page, a borrowed horse, and a husband whose habits she did not know. But the empty horse remained in Mercy Ford. That was enough for the morning. She faced the mountains. Rowan waited until she brought Juniper alongside him before urging his gelding toward the first climb. They rode out together beneath a whitening sky, and before the sun cleared the ridge, Mercy Ford disappeared behind the timber. The first mile of the climb was easy enough to make Clara suspicious. The trail rose through open timber, broad and white beneath the horse's hooves. Snow clung to the lower branches, but the wind had not yet driven it deep across the path. Juniper walked with her head low and her ears turning toward every sound. Rowan kept several lengths ahead. He did not talk to fill the silence. He watched the ridge, the snow beneath the trees, and the places where the wind had combed the ground clean. Twice he dismounted without explanation. The first time, he broke ice from a narrow spring and let both horses drink. The second, he tied a strip of red wool around a branch at shoulder height. What is that for? Finding the trail after dark. You cannot see red in the dark. You can feel for cloth when every branch is iced. He tied another strip 50 yards higher. Do you mark the whole route? Only where the mountain lies. She waited. He pointed uphill. That slope looks gentle. It drops into a ravine beyond those trees. Clara studied the white rise. Nothing distinguished it from the safe ground beside it. How often does someone make that mistake? Once? Near noon, the wind shifted. Clara felt it at the back of her neck. The air had sharpened while they climbed, but now it carried fine snow from somewhere above, dry enough to sting her cheek. Rowan turned in the saddle. Keep Juniper in my tracks. I have been. I know. Keep doing it. The trail became a shelf cut across the mountainside. Stone rose on their right. On the left, timber fell away into a white depth Clara could not measure. Juniper's hind hoof slipped. The mare recovered, but Clara's hands tightened on the reins. Ease, Rowan said. I am easing. You're pulling her mouth. Clara forced her fingers open. Juniper steadied. She knows the ground, Rowan said. Let her choose her feet. That is difficult while looking down. Then don't. Clara fixed her eyes between Juniper's ears. They crossed one slow step at a time. At the far side, Rowan waited beside a rock outcrop. You did well. I did not fall. That's usually the measure. They ate without dismounting. Travel bread and venison, with snow melted in a small pan beneath the rocks. Rowan gave Clara the hotter cup. I am not made of glass, she said. No. Then why? You're colder. She looked at her damp gloves. You could have said so. I just did. Above them, the sky darkened. Rowan checked the wind and rose. We need to move. How far? 8 miles. That is not an answer. 3 hours in good weather. And now? Longer. The next climb was steeper. Juniper began to breathe hard. Rowan chose a zigzag path through the timber, avoiding open slopes where the snow lay smooth and unbroken. Once, a deep sound rolled across the mountain. Not thunder. Clara felt it through the horse beneath her. What was that? Slide on the west face. Can another one reach us? Not from that slope, he answered without pretending there was no danger. Clara found the honesty steadier than comfort would have been. The snow thickened until Rowan became a dark shape between white trunks. Every few minutes he looked back, not to ask whether she was all right, but to confirm she was still there. At a fork, marked by a leaning pine, he turned east. Clara halted Juniper. The freight trace goes north. So does Voss. You said your cabin is on the east shoulder. It is. Then why does this trail look unused? Because I prefer it that way. The path ahead was no wider than a game track. Would Pike know this route? No. Rusk? Maybe part of it. That was enough to make her follow. An hour later, Rowan stopped and raised one hand. Through the snow came a sound like wood striking wood. Once, then again. He drew his rifle. What is it? Clara asked. Stay here. That was not in our agreement. His head turned. You should have included it. Another knock sounded below them. Then Clara recognized it, a loose shutter striking a wall. Rowan listened and returned the rifle to its sheath. Lower shelter. They descended to a low structure built against stone. Rowan fastened the shutter while Clara looked inside. The shelter held a bunk, a rusted stove, dry kindling, blankets, and a shelf with salt and beans. You keep this for strangers? For whoever needs it. Do they repay you? Sometimes they leave wood, and if they do not, they still lived. His hand remained on the latch. Your sister, Clara said. Did she have a place like this when she left Black Vein? No. The word ended the question, but not the understanding. By the time the cabin appeared, twilight had flattened the world into blue and gray. Clara saw smoke first, thin against the trees. Then the roof emerged beneath the snow. Built low and broad, a stable leaned against the north side. Beyond it stood a smokehouse and a woodshed stacked nearly to the rafters. Rowan dismounted stiffly. We make the horses right before ourselves. Clara's feet struck the ground and almost failed beneath her. She caught the saddle. Rowan moved, then stopped before touching her. May I? No. She waited until strength returned to her legs. Now you may take the reins. He did. They rubbed both horses dry, checked their legs, and gave them hay before carrying anything inside. Rowan did not rush, even as darkness settled. The animals had brought them out. They were owed care before comfort. Inside, the cabin smelled of cold ash, pine, leather, and metal from the traps hanging along one wall. It was larger than Clara expected. A stone fireplace occupied the west end. A table stood beneath the front window. Shelves held tinware, tools, folded cloth, cartridges, jars of dried herbs, and books arranged by size. The loft ladder rose near the back wall. Nothing was soft except the hides before the hearth. Nothing was dirty. Rowan set her bag beside the table. Your room. He pointed to a narrow door beyond the kitchen counter. Clara opened it. A small bed stood beneath a square window. The mattress was covered by 2 blankets. There was a washstand, a wooden peg, a crate for clothing, and just enough space to stand between them. The latch was mounted inside. New iron, bright screws. Clara touched it. "You put this in recently, yesterday morning, before you knew me, after I heard Amos talking about Pike at the dry goods store. You expected me to agree. No. Then why prepare the room? In case you needed it." She tested the latch twice. It held. On the small table lay a key. "What is that for?" "The outside lock." "You have another?" "No." She picked it up. "I thought you said the room latched from inside." "It does. The key is for when you leave it, so no one enters. That is the idea." Clara closed her hand around it. Rowan walked away before she could thank him. He knelt at the fireplace and began laying kindling. Clara removed her wet gloves and hung them near the stove. "What needs doing?" she asked. "Fire first, water second, food after." "I can handle food." "You've been riding since morning. So have you. I'm used to it. I am used to working tired. That is not the same as needing to." She looked at him. He struck a match. "I did not bring you here to replace one day of labor with another," he said. "No. You brought me here because a piece of paper was faster than a judge." "That too." The flame caught. Clara unpacked the travel bread anyway. They ate venison, bread, and canned peaches at the table. Rowan opened the peaches without ceremony. "Were you saving those?" "Yes." "For what?" "Bad day." She glanced toward the snow striking the window. "Fair." Afterward, Rowan explained the cabin's rules. Water came from a spring box east of the house. In hard weather, a covered barrel stood behind the kitchen. The north tree line was not to be crossed alone, because the ground broke sharply beyond it. The stable lantern stayed outside the hay. The rifle by the door remained loaded. "Can you shoot?" he asked. "No. I'll teach you. I have not agreed. You will before winter settles." That sounds less like a request. "It is the only part of your safety I will not leave entirely to preference." Clara folded her arms. "You may refuse to carry one," he said. "You may not refuse to know how one works." She thought of Rusk in the chapel doorway. "Fine. Tomorrow. Not before coffee." That almost smile appeared again. "Agreed." He showed her the root cellar hatch, the snow line strung from the front step to the stable, and a handbell beside the door. "If you hear 3 strikes from the ridge, someone is coming down fast. If you hear 6, get inside and bar the door." "Who uses the bell?" "May, Owen, sometimes the freight men. And if Voss's men come, they won't ring." The cabin settled as the fire warmed it. Snow slid from the roof in heavy sheets. Clara placed the forged contract and stamped marriage copy inside her mother's black book. She wrapped all 3 in oilcloth and tucked them beneath the mattress in her room. Rowan saw where she carried the bundle. He did not ask what it contained. "I'll sleep in the loft," he said. "There is a chamber pot beneath the bed. Water is beside the kitchen. You do not need to come through the main room after the lamps are out." "You planned for me not to have to pass you in the dark." "Yes." The answer was so plain that she had nowhere to put the feeling it caused. He banked the fire and climbed to the loft. Clara entered her room and shut the door. For several minutes she stood without moving. The cabin creaked in the wind. A log shifted in the hearth. Above her came one measured footstep, then the sound of Rowan setting down his boots. She slid the latch into place. The click was small. Her father's house had possessed 4 locks. None had ever belonged to her. Amos could open the kitchen, pantry, office, and every bedroom with the ring at his belt. This door had 2 protections. One key in Clara's pocket, one latch beneath her hand. She undressed to her shift and set her boots where she could reach them. Then she lay beneath the blankets with her mother's shawl folded over her chest. Sleep did not come. Her body listened for familiar warnings, the uncertain step in the hall, the pause outside the door, the scrape of a hand against wood. She knew how a man sounded when deciding whether anger entitled him to enter. The cabin gave her wind, fire, and silence. Once Rowan descended from the loft. Clara sat up. His footsteps crossed the main room. Water poured into a cup. The floorboard outside her door gave a soft complaint. He stopped. Clara's hand closed around the brass key. The pause lasted one breath. Then his steps moved away. He added wood to the fire and returned to the loft. No hand tested the latch. No voice used the word wife. No one asked whether she was grateful. Clara remained upright until the last ember light faded beneath the door. At some point, she understood that she was waiting for a trespass Rowan had already decided not to commit. She lay down again. Her fingers loosened around the key. Outside, snow covered the trail that led back to Mercy Ford. Inside, behind a door secured from her side, Clara Bellamy Cade slept without her boots on. Clara woke before dawn because 20 years of habit did not disappear behind one locked door. For several seconds, she did not know where she was. The ceiling sloped differently. The air smelled of pine smoke instead of yeast and horse leather. Snow pressed a pale square against the window. Then her fingers found the brass key beneath the pillow. She dressed, lifted the latch, and entered the main room. Rowan was already outside. His boots were gone from beneath the loft ladder, and a line of cold air slipped under the front door. On the table he had left coffee grounds and a folded scrap of paper. Spring box is frozen at the lip. Break only the top ice. Do not step beyond the rope. Clara read it twice. The note told her where the danger was and left the work to her judgment. She built the fire, heated water from the covered barrel, and began examining the kitchen cupboards. By sunrise, she understood that Rowan Cade had survived 6 years alone through discipline, memory, and an almost criminal disregard for arithmetic. Beans occupied 3 shelves in 4 containers. Salt was stored beside lamp oil. 2 sacks marked flour held cornmeal. A jar labeled nails contained buttons, while the actual nails sat in a tobacco tin beneath the sink. He had enough dried apples for 2 winters, and barely enough lard for 3 weeks. When he came in carrying wood, Clara had arranged every movable supply on the table. He stopped. "Something wrong?" "Yes." His eyes crossed the jars, sacks, tools, and labels. "How bad?" "You have 43 pounds of beans." "That sounds good." "You have 11 pounds of salt." "Also good." "You have less than 3 pounds of lard, 1 usable candle, and enough coffee to make poor decisions until February." He set down the wood. "I was going to Cedar Gap." "When?" "Soon. That is not a date. It was before you put all my belongings on the table." Clara opened her notebook. "What day is the supply wagon due?" "First Monday after the next clear spell." "That could be 3 days or 3 weeks." "Yes." She wrote it down. Rowan removed his coat. "What do you need from me? The truth about what you eat, what you trade, and how many people might use the lower shelter before spring." "I don't know the last one." "Estimate." 5. "Last winter?" 12. She looked up. "Storm took a freight team near Slate Pass. And 12 people used your stores." 9. 3 came here. "Did they repay you?" 1 left fox pelts, 1 repaired the roof. "And the others?" "Lived." Clara made a separate column. Emergency stores, not household stores. Those need their own inventory. "I know what is in the shelter." "You knew you had lard?" He glanced toward the nearly empty crock. "I knew where the crock was." "That is not the same thing." "No," he admitted. By noon, the cabin had a household list, a ration estimate, and 3 categories of supplies: daily use, trade, and rescue. Rowan answered every question, even when the answer made him look careless. When Clara found a folded account sheet beneath a stack of traps, he handed her a box containing 6 years of receipts. "You kept all of these?" "Miriam taught me." The name passed through the room without explanation. Then she deserved better organization. A short breath escaped him, almost laughter. She would agree. That afternoon, Clara tried to wake her mother's starter. At Mercy Ford, she could judge dough by scent and touch. Here the air was thinner, the cabin colder, and the flour drier. Her first loaf rose too quickly near the stove, then collapsed in the oven. She cut it open and found a wet center. Rowan returned from checking traps as she carried it toward the slop bucket. "Don't. It failed. It is still bread. It is a brick wearing a crust. I have eaten worse. That is not praise. It was not meant as praise." She handed it to him. He cut a thick slice, spread bacon grease on it, and ate. Clara watched in disbelief. "You truly have eaten worse." "Much." She adjusted the water, moved the next bowl farther from the stove, and shortened the final rise. The second loaf split. The third came out with a firm brown crust and a hollow sound beneath her knuckles. Rowan took 1 bite. "Well, worth coming down the mountain for. That is almost a compliment. It is the strongest kind I give." Over the next 6 days, the mountain taught by refusing to forgive assumptions. Water froze when left uncovered. Wet wood smoked before it burned. A clear sunrise meant nothing if thin white clouds gathered above the western peaks. Rowan showed her the signs without turning them into lectures. "Rim around the moon," he said one evening. "Storm? Within a day. The ravens are low. Wind above the ridge. Juniper is facing the stable. She wants feed." Clara stared at him. Sometimes a horse is only hungry. She learned the snow line from cabin to stable with her eyes closed and kept mittens inside her coat so sweat would not freeze in the fingers. Rowan learned to record what he took from storage. He also learned not to place wet gloves on Clara's baking cloth. The third time he did it, she held up the cloth. "What is wrong with this?" "It is wet." "What was it yesterday?" "Dry." "What do we call that?" "A mistake." "And tomorrow?" "My gloves go on the peg." They did. The rifle lesson took place behind the stable on a windless morning. Rowan set 3 empty tins against the bank. He showed her how to brace the stock and keep her finger away from the trigger until she intended to fire. Before adjusting her elbow, he asked permission. She gave it. His hand was warm through her sleeve. He corrected the angle and stepped back at once. "Do not fight the recoil," he said. "Hold firm. Let your body move." "That sounds like fighting it." "It is the difference between a tree and a locked door." She fired. The shot cracked across the clearing. Snow dropped from a pine. Clara missed every tin. "You closed your eyes," Rowan said. "The rifle exploded beside my face. That is what rifles do. Useful warning." The fifth shot knocked over the left tin. Clara lowered the rifle. "You seem surprised. I was deciding whether to praise you. And you listen well. That is not praise for the shot. No, the shot was acceptable." She smiled before she could stop herself. It startled them both. Rowan looked away first and reset the tin. On the 8th day, May Donnelly arrived with her brother Owen and a mule carrying flour, potatoes, lamp oil, and 2 jars of plum preserves. May entered the cabin, surveyed Clara's labels, and said, "You have done more in a week than Rowan managed in 6 years." "I knew where everything was," Rowan said. "You knew which direction to search." Owen set the flour by the table. He was lean, quiet, and iron-bearded. May offered Clara her hand. "May Donnelly. Clara Bellamy. Bellamy Cade when the paper needs it. Good arrangement. You have not heard it. You kept your name. That tells me enough to begin." They ate stew and fresh bread. Halfway through the meal, May said, "Pike came by yesterday." Rowan's spoon stopped. "What did he want?" "To know whether we had seen a newly married couple on the east shoulder." "What did you tell him?" "That if he wanted to discuss marriages, he should first find a wife willing to tolerate him." Owen drank coffee to hide a smile. May reached for bread. Rusk stayed with the horses. He was studying the South Trail. "Did they mention Amos?" Clara asked. "Only that Voss had taken possession of certain collateral at Mercy Ford." The spoon in Clara's hand went cold. "The station. Likely." Rowan began to speak. Clara shook her head. "I knew the price." Knowing did not make it painless. Her mother's stove might already belong to Voss. Amos might be sleeping in the stable or drinking in a room he no longer owned. But returning would not restore any of it. It would only prove Voss had chosen the right pressure. May studied her. "You want news from below?" "Yes. I can arrange it without giving Pike your trail." "Thank you." After supper, Rowan and Owen went to brace the stable roof. May remained at the table. "You trust him?" she asked. "Not entirely." "Good." Clara looked up. Trust given all at once is usually fear wearing Sunday clothes. Build it from what he does. "He has done what he said." "Then that is one stone." May glanced toward Clara's room. "He put the latch in?" "Yes." "Ugly work?" "Very." "Then he did it himself." Clara touched the key in her pocket. "Did Miriam stay with you?" May's expression changed. "For a time." "What happened to her?" "That belongs to Rowan." "Everyone says that." "Perhaps everyone is right." May gathered the bowls. "I will tell you this. He built the lower shelter after she came off Black Vein in winter. Before that, he believed a strong person could survive by being strong. Miriam taught him strength does not replace a roof." Outside, Rowan's hammer struck wood in steady blows. That night, Clara carried her mother's black book into her room. She had postponed opening it because the week had demanded simpler things: heat, food, horses, weather. Now delay had become fear by another name. She unlocked the cover clasp. The first pages contained freight records in her mother's compact hand. Dates, wagon numbers, mine destinations, weight at Mercy Ford, weight declared at Black Vein. The numbers did not match. A load recorded as 1,800 pounds at the station became 2,400 at the mine. Food shipped at $60 entered Voss's accounts at $94. Passenger fares appeared twice, once as transportation, again as debt advanced to the passenger. Names appeared in the margins. Lydia Snow, charged $11 for transport though she worked passage. June Mercer, laundry term said 4 months. Voss copy says until account settled. Miriam Cade, medicine $18, actual bottle from station stock $3. Clara stopped. Beneath Miriam's name, her mother had written, Rowan Cade asked for true balance. Pike refused itemization. Keep duplicate. The final pages were in Clara's own newer hand, entries copied from manifests without understanding why her mother had begun the work. Together, the two sets formed a chain. Not proof of one forged contract, proof of a method. A floorboard creaked in the main room. Clara closed the book and listened. Rowan sat at the table, drawing a whetstone over a knife. He did not approach her door. She opened it. He looked up. I need another lockbox, she said. For what? Evidence. The word changed his posture. Clara carried the book to the table, but kept one hand over it. My mother recorded Voss's freight tallies, mine weights, transport charges, women's names. His gaze lowered to the cover. Miriam? Yes. He did not ask to see the page. You knew my mother challenged Pike? No. She wrote that you asked for Miriam's true balance. I asked more than once, and Pike refused. Yes. Clara opened to the entry and turned the book toward him. He read it. His face became still in the way she had begun to recognize as pain forced into usefulness. She paid $3 for medicine, Clara said. Voss charged $18. She needed quinine. My mother supplied it from the station. Rowan touched the edge of the page. May I? Clara pushed the book across the table. He read the surrounding entries, then closed it carefully. They did this to all of them. I think so. You have names, and dates, wagon numbers, declared weights. Judge Hale would need originals. These are original entries, some in my mother's hand, some in mine. Pike will call them private notes. Then we find the matching public ledgers, at Mercy Ford, or Black Vein. The danger seemed to enter the cabin with the words, Rowan pushed the book back. Hide it somewhere I do not know. Why? If they come and force me to tell them, I cannot give what I do not know. A week earlier, Clara would have heard only the possibility that men were coming. Now, she also heard what he was offering, protection from his own failure. She wrapped the book and rose. At her door she paused. The flower shelf has a false back. He said nothing. That is where I am putting it. You just told me. I know. The choice surprised her even as she made it. Not full trust. One more stone. Rowan inclined his head. I will forget the shelf exists. Clara hid the ledger, replaced the board, and locked her door. This time, the key did not feel like the only safety she possessed. Pike came to the mountain 3 mornings later, carrying enough gold to make Mercy look expensive. The ridge bell did not ring. Juniper warned them first, striking the stable wall hard enough to shake snow from the roof. Rowan set aside the trap spring he was repairing and stood. 3 riders, he said. Clara closed the account book. They came for me. They came to use you against yourself. That is still mine to answer. His hand tightened on the rifle. Then he stepped away from the door. Stand where Rusk cannot reach you. Clara moved behind the table. The false-backed flower shelf remained closed behind her. Rowan opened the door. Edwin Pike sat his gray horse as though he had arrived at a town office. Boyd Rusk rode beside him. A narrow-faced young man carried a locked iron box across his saddle. Pike removed one glove. "Mr. Cade, Mrs. Cade." "Bellamy Cade," Clara said. His eyes flicked toward her. Of course. Rusk dismounted. "Leave the weapons with the horses," Rowan said. Pike smiled. "We are not trespassers. You crossed my marked line without ringing." Pike considered him, then handed his revolver belt to the young rider. Rusk remained armed until Pike said his name. Clara spoke from the doorway. "Mr. Pike may enter. Mr. Rusk waits outside." Rusk laughed. "Boyd," Pike said again. Rusk removed his gun and stayed on the step. Pike entered with the young man. The cabin seemed smaller around his polished boots. "This is Abel Finch, Mr. Voss's accounting courier and witness." Finch nodded without meeting Clara's eyes. "Mr. Voss regrets that your father placed you in an upsetting position," Pike said. "My father placed me in a forged contract. Your allegation remains untested. So does your claim." Pike accepted the correction with a slight inclination of his head. He also regrets that emotion has drawn Mr. Cade into a matter of commercial debt. "I was drawn in before Clara was," Rowan said. Pike's composure thinned. "Miriam Cade's account was settled years ago." "Was it?" Pike returned his attention to Clara. "Mr. Voss believes a practical settlement serves everyone." Finch placed the iron box on the table. Pike unlocked it. Gold filled 2 shallow trays, arranged in precise rows. Clara had seen strong boxes pass through Mercy Ford. She had never seen so much money offered to one person. "How much?" she asked. $1,000. "What does it purchase?" Pike unfolded a document. "Mr. Voss will release Amos Bellamy from the $630 debt and return the Mercy Ford property after administrative costs. The remaining money will be placed in your name. In exchange, you acknowledge that the labor agreement was entered in error rather than fraud. You withdraw public accusations against Mr. Voss and his representatives, and you leave Ironwater County." Clara looked at the gold. Her father free. The station restored. Enough money to begin elsewhere. Only silence. "Why must I leave?" "To prevent continued conflict. To prevent me from comparing ledgers." Finch's eyes tightened. Pike rested a finger on the settlement. "You have been on this mountain less than 2 weeks. Do not mistake shelter for independence. Is that what Mr. Voss calls the gold? I call it opportunity. To sell the truth more cleanly than my father sold me." Rusk shifted outside. The porch board groaned. Pike lowered his voice. "Young women without money rarely receive the luxury of principle." Clara remembered how every wage at Black Vein vanished beneath fees. "What are the administrative costs?" "They are itemized." "Show me." Finch opened a portfolio. Pike looked displeased, but refusing would expose the offer before its own witness. The statement listed the original debt, penalties, seizure costs, contract preparation, transport, livestock holding, legal review, and security. Clara read the figures. A transport fee of $38. In her mother's book, Lydia Snow had been charged $38 for winter carriage, though she arrived in July. Legal review, $24. June Mercer's altered term carried the same amount. Security, $16. Miriam's account. Clara lifted the page. What did livestock holding cover? Care of station animals during the collateral transition, Pike said. How many animals? 4 horses and a mule, Finch answered. Pike looked at him. The station held 6 horses when I left. 2 were excluded as livery property. No, I entered their feed and shoeing. What rate did Voss charge? Pike's patience cooled. Mrs. Cade. Bellamy Cade. At what rate? Rowan asked. Finch checked a smaller sheet. $1.25 per animal per day. For 8 days? Yes. That is $40. This statement says 48. Finch blinked. Clerical error, Pike said. Clara continued reading. A property inspection fee appeared 3 times, each for $12. $12. The shortage in the Barton invoice the morning Amos feared she had found something. Who inspected the station? Mr. Voss's agents. Names. Not required. Then the charge cannot be verified. This is a settlement, not an audit. That is why the numbers are poor. Finch lowered his gaze. $56 for contract preparation, Clara said. 3 pages, an unrecorded filing, and a forged signature. A standard fee. You charged my father for forging my name. The statement trembled once in Pike's hand. Mr. Voss is offering to forgive these charges. No, he is offering to hide them. Pike folded his hands. You are arguing over debts that will no longer exist. I am asking how often they do. She placed a finger beside the repeated fees. 38 for transport, 24 for legal review, 16 for security, 12 for inspection. The same figures appear in other women's accounts. Finch looked up. Pike turned toward him, and a warning passed between them. You do not possess other accounts, Pike said. I have seen freight manifests. Those do not contain private debt. They contain women moved as freight. Silence entered the cabin. Pike's voice became careful. What exactly did your mother keep? There. Not whether. What? Clara let the question hang. You crossed a winter trail with $1,000, an accountant, an armed man, and a document sending me out of the county. You are not buying peace. You are buying whatever you think I carried from Mercy Ford. Pike reached for the statement. Clara kept her hand on it. Leave this. It belongs to Mr. Voss. Then I will copy it. No. Too quick. Clara looked at Finch. You are here as witness. Yes, ma'am. Then witness that Mr. Pike opened a settlement with written figures and refused examination. Pike's expression went flat. You turn clerical habits into theater. No, I know what a thing weighs. She released the page. Take the gold, Pike said. Whatever story you believe you found will not make you safer. The threat was almost gentle. Clara remembered the empty horse, her locked room, and her mother writing names into margins because official pages had failed them. Close the box. Finch hesitated. My answer is no. You have not considered your father. I have considered him for years. He will lose everything. He spent what belonged to me before Voss took the building. Pike glanced at Rowan. Does your husband speak for you? When I ask him. Convenient. Accurate, Rowan said. Clara faced Pike. Tell Gideon Voss that Amos's debt is his to collect lawfully. Tell him my marriage remains. Tell him I will not leave Ironwater County because a man with bad books finds my memory inconvenient. Rusk opened the door. Cold air swept across the table. Pike gathered the settlement. Before Finch closed the box, Clara said, 4 animals at $1.25 for 8 days is $40. You said 4 horses and a mule. That is 5 animals, which would be 50. Neither figure is 48. Finch's face flushed. Clara had waited to see whether he would correct himself. He had not. Which number did Voss invent? She asked. Pike put on his gloves. At Black Vein, they ring before blasting. Wise people leave when warned. Then it is fortunate your men came without ringing ours. Pike departed. Rowan waited until the riders disappeared beneath the timber, then barred the door. Clara's knees began to shake. Not while the gold lay open, not when Pike threatened her, only now, when steadiness was no longer required. Rowan poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across the room rather than beside her. You knew Finch's numbers did not fit. Yes. Why wait? I wanted to know whether he was careless or obedient. Which? Afraid. She drank. The coffee had turned bitter, but warmth returned feeling to her hands. Rowan glanced toward the flower shelves without looking at the one that mattered. What do the repeated figures mean? Pike uses a schedule: transport, legal review, security, inspection, medicine, bed, meals. Everyone enters owing something different, then the same fees are added until the balance cannot fall. Can we prove it? With Voss's statement and my mother's book. We do not have his statement. Clara turned her notebook toward him. While Pike spoke, she had copied every visible figure. Rowan read the columns. A quiet change came over his face, not surprise, but recognition of what the figures could do. You memorized the rest? Enough to rebuild it. Miriam remembered songs after hearing them once. Clara's pencil stopped. The comparison was grief, finding a familiar shape. I am not your sister. I know. Do not help me because I remind you of her. I didn't, not at first. And now? He answered carefully. Now I help because you asked me to stand aside while you answered for yourself. Clara looked down at the figures. Gratitude could be mistaken for love. Safety could be mistaken for belonging. Respect was different. It grew slowly and asked no surrender. She reconstructed Pike's statement before the light faded. Beside each charge, she wrote the matching number from her mother's entries. 38. 24. 16. 12. Again and again. What happens next? Rowan asked. We stop waiting for Voss to explain himself. We need the public ledgers. At Mercy Ford and Black Vein. Mercy Ford is occupied. Yes. She drew a line beneath the last column. Then we begin with someone who can carry evidence farther than Voss can reach. You mentioned Deputy Marshal Larkin. He is due at Mays before the first heavy snow. Clara looked toward the western ridge, where thin white clouds had begun gathering. Then we make sure he leaves with more than a story. The first heavy snow arrived a day before Deputy Marshal Larkin did. It began before dawn and erased the yard by breakfast. The woodshed vanished behind a white curtain. By noon, the line between the cabin and stable sagged beneath ice, and Rowan had to cut a path every hour to keep it usable. Clara spent the day making copies. She placed her mother's black book beside the reconstructed settlement and worked at the table while snow struck the windows. She copied dates, wagon numbers, weights, fees, and names onto separate sheets, marking each page at the bottom. Copied faithfully from the Bellamy freight record by Clara Ruth Bellamy Cade. Rowan carried wood, checked the horses, and sharpened pencils when they dulled. He did not offer to help with the figures. "You could copy names," Clara said. "I could. But you would have to check everything I wrote." "That is true. So I am saving time." She worked until her fingers cramped. By evening, she had created 3 sets. One remained inside the false-backed shelf. One went into an oilskin packet for May. The third she wrapped separately with Pike's reconstructed charges and the stamped marriage record. "The original stays with me," she said. Rowan studied the black book. If Larkin can reach Fort Redstone, he should carry it. If he is stopped, everything ends in one saddlebag. He is a deputy marshal. Rusk knows how to shoot a deputy marshal. Rowan did not argue. They left for Mays before sunrise. The storm had weakened, but the mountain held what it had given. Snow reached Juniper's knees in the open ground. Rowan broke trail on his gelding while Clara followed, leaning forward as the mare climbed. The red wool markers appeared one by one between iced branches. At the lower shelter, Rowan dismounted and checked the stove. "Someone was here," he said. The ashes were cold but recent. A heel print remained beneath the roof where the snow had not reached. Clara examined the shelf. Nothing taken. Blanket was used. Traveler? Maybe. He found a cigarette end beside the wall. The paper was white and finely cut. "Pike smokes those," Clara said. "So does half the money in Fort Redstone. But not many trappers." Rowan buried it beneath his boot. They continued without speaking. May's house stood lower on the mountain, where the wind had stripped the southern fields nearly bare. Owen opened the barn before they reached the yard. "You are late," May called from the porch. "We are early," Rowan said. "Larkin arrived at midnight." Inside, Deputy Marshal Ezra Larkin sat beside the stove with one boot removed and his left foot wrapped in cloth. He was broad through the chest, with graying hair and the tired expression of a man who had spent too many years carrying trouble between towns. "Cade," he said. "Larkin." The marshal's attention shifted to Clara. He stood despite his foot. "Mrs. Cade. Bellamy Cade. So May informed me." May placed coffee on the table. "I inform people until they learn." Clara set down the oilskin packet. Larkin did not reach for it. "Before I see evidence, I need to hear how it came to you," Clara told him. She began with her mother's freight records and ended with Pike's settlement offer. She omitted nothing that mattered and nothing merely painful. Larkin asked questions about dates, access, handwriting, and whether anyone else had seen the original book. "Amos Bellamy knew it existed," she said. "He claimed Voss did not. You trust that?" "No." "Good." Rowan leaned against the wall, silent. Larkin opened the packet. He read for nearly an hour. May worked at the stove without pretending not to listen. Owen repaired harness by the window. At last, Larkin placed the reconstructed settlement beside one of the copied freight pages. "Same numbers," he said. "Repeated as standard charges," Clara answered. "Different women, different dates. Same transport, security, legal, and inspection fees. That proves a pattern if the source books can be authenticated. My mother wrote the earlier entries. I wrote the later ones. Can anyone identify her hand? Amos. The stage clerk, Reverend Tully, in Mercy Ford. And the public freight ledger? At the station. Under Voss's control. Yes. Larkin rubbed his jaw. What about Black Vein? They keep arrival weights and company accounts, Rowan said. If they have not burned them. Pike believes Clara carried records out, Rowan said. That means he does not know exactly what she has. Larkin looked at Clara. You showed him nothing? Only that I could recognize his arithmetic. Then he may preserve the ledgers until he understands the danger. Or change them, May said. He will change what can be changed, Clara replied. But weights connect to ore shipments, freight contracts, feed purchases, and payroll. Altering one number forces changes in 5 books. Larkin's eyes narrowed with interest. You know where the connections are? I kept the station side. He turned back to the copied pages. This is enough for Judge Hale to authorize a formal seizure request. It may not be enough to convict anyone. It is enough to reach the next door, Clara said. Yes, then take it. Larkin tapped his wrapped foot. My horse broke through crust below Split Creek. I got clear. My ankle did not. How long? Rowan asked. May says 3 days before I should ride. I said 5. May called. Larkin ignored her. The route to Fort Redstone will close if another storm comes, Clara said. It may close tonight, Owen said. Everyone looked toward the window. A hard blue line had formed above the western ridge. Rowan crossed to the glass. Wind is turning. Larkin gathered the copies. I can send a wire from Cedar Gap. The telegraph line was down last week, Owen said. Then a rider. Who? Clara asked. No one answered immediately. Larkin looked at Rowan. You know the east route. Yes. You could reach Fort Redstone in 2 days. Not with the main pass loading. The old coal trace? Owen asked. Rowan's jaw tightened. Part of it. Clara knew that look. The route was possible, which was not the same as safe. Larkin said, I need the original book, your sworn statement, and someone who can explain the figures without taking an hour to find each connection. That is Clara, Rowan said. He said it as fact, not invitation. May set down the spoon. She does not need to ride into a storm because men below cannot keep honest books. No, Clara said. I need to ride because the honest book is mine. Rowan turned from the window. You have not seen the coal trace. I have seen it on freight maps. A map does not show where the timber fell last spring. You do. It may not be passable. Then we decide when we reach it. His expression hardened. That is not how mountain decisions work. No, mountain decisions appear to involve you saying something is impossible until you choose to do it. May covered a cough that might have been laughter. Rowan lowered his voice. If Rusk watched the lower shelter, he may know which route we use. Then, Larkin leaves by the south road with 1 set of copies. Larkin understood first. He draws whoever is watching. I did not say he draws them, Clara said. I said anyone watching must decide which evidence matters. And the original goes east, Rowan said. With us. Larkin frowned. Splitting protection is a risk. Keeping everything together is a larger one, Clara replied. You said Judge Hale needs the original and someone who can explain it. I am both. Rowan came to the table. We leave at first light. If the west wind strengthens overnight, we wait. Until when? until I say the upper shelf will hold. Clara began to object. He placed one finger on the private agreement, visible where it rested inside her packet. You decide when it looks safe. I decide whether the trail will kill the horses. Their own words returned to her. Clara nodded once. Agreed. Larkin took one copy of the records and sealed it inside his dispatch case. May accepted another and hid it somewhere she did not name. The black book remained before Clara. Judge Hale will ask whether marriage influenced your testimony, Larkin said. It influenced where I slept while preparing it. She may ask whether Cade told you what to say. He has not yet learned he cannot tell me where to store salt. May laughed openly this time. Rowan's mouth shifted at one corner. Larkin sealed Clara's written statement. If you reach Fort Redstone, go directly to Hale's chambers. Do not surrender the original to a clerk bearing Pike's signature, even if the clerk has a territorial seal. How will we know Hale? 61. Silver hair cut at the jaw, walks with a blackthorn cane she does not need, and uses it to frighten lawyers. Clara committed every detail to memory. They stayed at May's that night. The wind rose after dark. It moved over the roof like water over stone, steady and deep. Clara lay in the upstairs room May had given her, fully dressed, the black book inside her coat. She did not sleep. Near midnight, someone tapped once on the door. Clara? Rowan. She opened it. He stood in the hall holding a folded map. I want to show you the coal trace before morning. She followed him downstairs. They spread the map beside the stove. It was old, the paper soft at the creases. Rowan pointed to a thin line running east of the main pass. The tunnel begins here. It was cut for a coal prospect that failed. The trail through the lower ravine is sheltered from west wind. And the danger? Slide ground above the north entrance. Bad timber in the tunnel. If snow blocks the outer shelf, we turn back. Even if Larkin has already taken the south road? Yes. Clara studied the route. The tunnel connected to an abandoned haul road, descending toward May's lower acreage. She had seen its old freight code in her mother's notes. C7 East Spur. This crosses Hollow Creek, twice. The second crossing used to have a bridge. Used to. She looked at him. You might have mentioned that. You asked for the danger. I expected a complete answer. The complete answer is that every mile has one. He traced an alternate line with his thumb. If we are followed, this spur brings us back toward May's. Do not take it unless I cannot lead. The words settled heavily. Why would you be unable to lead? Horse goes down, I get hurt, I am separated from you. Those are three different problems. They have the same answer. Follow C7 downhill. Ignore any fork marked with 2 axe cuts. Those lead to Black Vein timber claims. Clara memorized the turns. Red wool? She asked. Not on this trail. Then mark it tomorrow. Clara, you cannot prepare for your own failure and refuse me the means to survive it. He considered her across the map. Then he nodded. I will mark the safe turns, and I carry the book. Yes, and the rifle. You carry the shorter one. She folded the map and returned it to him. Their plan was not safe. It was only divided carefully enough that one ambush, one injured horse, or one frightened witness would not end everything. For the first time since Pike opened the box of gold, Clara felt the shape of their next move become solid. At dawn, Larkin would ride south with copies. Clara and Rowan would take the original east through the abandoned coal trace. Whichever road Voss chose to watch, the truth would already be traveling on another. The shot came before they reached the first red marker. Snow burst from the trunk beside Rowan's head. Down! Clara flattened over Juniper's neck as a second rifle cracked from the trees above the trail. Rowan wheeled his gelding across her line and fired toward the muzzle flash. "C7," he said. "Now." She pulled Juniper east. The mare lunged into unbroken snow. Behind them came another shot, then the sharp cry of Rowan's horse. Clara turned. The gelding staggered. Blood darkened Rowan's coat at the shoulder. A man moved between the pines above them, the brim of a hat, a brown sleeve, a rifle rising. Boyd Rusk. Clara dragged the shorter gun from its saddle sheath and fired. Bark exploded near his face. He dropped behind the ridge. The recoil numbed her arm. "Acceptable," Rowan said through clenched teeth. Then his gelding collapsed to one knee. Rowan slid off before the horse fell. He landed badly, but came up with his rifle in his left hand. "Take the book. It is on me." The saddlebags. Clara dismounted, pulled the emergency roll from his saddle, and tied it behind Juniper. Rowan put one hand against the gelding's face. The animal's eye fixed on him, dark and trusting. Clara turned away before the final shot. Rowan reached Juniper with his face emptied of everything but the next decision. "You ride. I hold the stirrup. You cannot run with that shoulder." "I can until I cannot." Rusk's voice rolled down from the ridge. "Cade, leave the woman. Voss only wants his property." Clara felt Rowan's good hand close around the saddle strap. "He wants the ledger," she said. "He wants both." A shot cracked into the air. The loaded slope above them answered with a low shudder. Rowan looked up. "Move." They plunged east on foot, Juniper fighting through the drifts between them. The shudder became a growl. The mountain broke behind them. Snow came through the timber like floodwater, snapping saplings and swallowing the trail. Juniper reared. Clara seized the bridle and dragged her behind a shoulder of stone as white force rushed past below. For several breaths there was no world beyond snow. Then the roar moved away. Rowan leaned against the rock, his face pale beneath the cold. "Rusk? Other side of the slide. You do not know that." "No." The road back had vanished. Clara opened the emergency roll. "Sit. We need the creek. You need to stop bleeding. Clara, sit." He obeyed. She cut open his sleeve. The bullet had passed through the upper shoulder. Blood welled steadily but not in pulses. "Move your fingers." He did. She packed both wounds and bound them tight with linen and a strip torn from her petticoat. "You have done this before," he said. "A coach driver put a splinter through his arm. Did he complain?" "Less than you." "I have not complained." "Your face has." She tied the knot. When Rowan tried to rise, his knees failed. Clara caught him beneath his good arm. "Get on, Juniper. The mare cannot carry both of us through deep snow. She can carry you." "No. Our agreement gave you authority over trails. It did not give you permission to be stupid." A faint movement touched his mouth. "May has been speaking to you. Get on." This time he did. Clara led Juniper downslope. No red markers showed the safe turns. Rowan had not reached this section before the ambush. The forest offered only snow and falling light. "C7 follows the old cut bank," he said. "Save your breath." There should be a split cedar. Clara found it below them. one side worn flat by wagon hubs. The abandoned haul road appeared as a shallow depression curving east. At the first fork, 2 axe cuts marked the left branch. Clara took the right. A rifle fired beyond the slide. "They are not all trapped," Rowan said. "Then they can follow the wrong road." At Hollow Creek, black water moved between shelves of ice. "How deep?" Clara asked. "Usually to the mare's belly." "Usually?" "Storm is warm below the ridge." She tested the current with a branch, then led Juniper in from upstream. Water climbed above Clara's knees and drove through her boots like knives. Rowan swayed in the saddle. "Stay awake." "I am." "What did May say when you built the lower shelter?" He did not answer. "Rowan." "She said the roof pitch was wrong." "Was it?" "Yes." "And Owen?" "Nothing." "That sounds like Owen." Juniper climbed the far bank. Clara's legs shook, but the old road continued beneath a cliff where wind had scoured the stones bare. She found the tunnel by its retaining wall. The lower switchback had collapsed. Broken timbers hung over the gorge. "The mare cannot cross," Rowan said. "Then we climb the wall. Too steep." "The road is gone." Clara removed the saddlebags, looped the lead rope around a pine above, and climbed first. Juniper tried once and slid. "Easy," Clara told her. "Choose your feet." The words Rowan had given her returned in her own voice. The mare lunged again and scrambled over the stones. Clara hauled the gear after them. The tunnel entrance stood 50 yards ahead, black beneath sagging beams. A cigarette ember glowed inside. Clara stopped. Rowan raised his rifle. Hoofbeats approached from the darkness, and a rider emerged leading a second horse. Abel Finch. He wore no fine coat now. An accounting case was strapped across his chest, and fear had stripped the obedience from his face. "Do not shoot." "What are you doing here?" Clara asked. "Pike sent Rusk ahead. I followed the east spur to warn you." Rowan kept the rifle trained on him. "Why?" "Voss ordered the Black Vein books burned." "Pike left for the mine after the settlement meeting." Finch touched the case. "I took what I could." "What did you bring?" "Arrival ledgers, payroll summaries, 3 labor books." "Miriam Cade?" Clara asked. Finch looked at Rowan. "Yes." Rowan's face hardened. "Why risk this now?" Clara said. "Rusk killed the night clerk who tried to copy the women's accounts." "When?" "Last night. Samuel Dade." "And Pike?" Finch swallowed. "Said snow would hide the grave until spring." Clara looked at the case. One frightened man could be lying. One accounting case could still destroy them. "You ride 20 yards ahead through the tunnel." "With you?" "If the timbers fail, you warn us. If this is a trap, you enter it first." "That is not much protection." "It is more than Samuel Dade received." Finch nodded. They entered the mountain. Clara lit the small oil lamp. Finch's lantern moved ahead, while Juniper carried Rowan behind her. Coal dust blackened the walls. Water dripped from warped beams. Halfway through, wood cracked overhead. Rock and frozen earth spilled behind the mare. The lamp guttered. Clara cupped the flame, but the oil tin had split during the climb. She took the bacon grease meant for supper, pressed it into the reservoir, and lowered the wick. The flame returned, small and smoky, but alive. Rowan watched from the saddle. "Good beans require lard," Clara said. "That was bacon grease. Then supper has made a sacrifice." They reached the east opening near dusk, and dug their way through the drift. Beyond it, the second Hollow Creek bridge was gone. 2 stone supports remained above fast water, joined by 1 fractured beam. "The horses cannot cross," Finch said. "The service ford?" Clara asked. "Too deep," Rowan answered. May's lower pasture lay on the other side. They stripped the saddles and turned the horses loose in sheltered timber. Juniper pressed her nose against Clara's shoulder. "I will come back," Clara whispered. Finch crossed the beam first on hands and knees, then took the accounting case. Clara tied a rope around Rowan's waist. "I can cross," he said. "You can barely stand. I can stand enough. You ride a bridge the way I say." He met her eyes through pain and cold. "Fair." Clara crossed ahead, straddling the beam and pulling herself over the gorge. On the far support, she braced the rope around an iron pin. Rowan began across. Halfway, his wounded arm failed. He rolled. The rope snapped tight. Clara struck the stone support hard enough to lose breath. Finch seized the line beside her. Rowan hung over the creek with one hand locked around the beam. "Do not let go," Clara shouted. "I had not planned to." They hauled until he found the timber with one boot, then another. Inch by inch, they dragged him onto the support. For several moments, all 3 lay in the snow. Then Rowan said, "Acceptable bridge work." Clara laughed once, breathless and furious. "You are never allowed to use that word again." They walked the final mile. Finch carried the ledgers. Clara supported Rowan beneath his good arm. The lamp died, but wind had cleared enough snow from the fields for May's lower barn to show against the dark. A lantern moved in the yard. Owen came running. May reached them with a blanket and one look at Rowan's shoulder. Inside. "There are ledgers," Clara said. "There is blood. Both matter." May caught Clara's face between cold hands. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Then argue after I keep your husband from dying." The word husband struck differently now. Not a paper shield. A wounded man whose weight she carried because she had chosen not to leave him. They laid Rowan on May's kitchen table. Owen barred the doors. Finch placed the black vein case beside Clara's mother's book. 2 records. 2 sides of the same theft. Rowan caught Clara's wrist before May cut away the dressing. "You got it through." "We got through." His grip weakened. Clara covered his hand with hers. Outside, snow buried the roads. Somewhere beyond the mountain, Rusk would learn that the slide, tunnel, and missing bridge had failed to stop them. Clara looked at her mother's book, Finch's ledgers, and the blood soaking Rowan's coat. She had begun this fight to keep one forged signature from deciding her life. It was no longer only hers. "Save him," she told May. Then she faced Finch. "When morning comes, you will show me every account Gideon Voss thought no woman would ever read." Rowan lived through the night, though May refused to call that the same as being safe. The bullet had passed cleanly through his shoulder, but the cold had slowed his blood and then punished him for losing it. Fever came before dawn. May packed the wound with boiled cloth and willow bark, while Owen held the lamp. Clara stayed beside the bed until May ordered her out. "You will do him no good by falling over." "I am not falling over. You have been awake 2 nights. "One and part of another." May pointed toward the kitchen. "Then use the part you have left." Abel Finch sat at the table with the black vein ledgers arranged before him. He had removed his coat, and without it he looked younger than Clara had thought. young enough to have mistaken obedience for safety until a dead clerk proved otherwise. Clara washed Rowan's blood from her hands and sat across from him. "Show me how Voss hides the balances." Finch opened the labor book. "He does not hide them in one place. That is the point. Each worker had 3 accounts. The first listed wages. The second listed company store purchases. The third, kept in Pike's office, contained penalties, transport, legal fees, and security expenses. The wage book made debt appear to shrink. The private book made it grow. Who sees all 3? Clara asked. Voss, Pike, the head cashier. I saw portions when I prepared monthly summaries. And Samuel Dade? He began comparing them. Finch turned to a page marked with Lydia Snow's name. Her original term had been 4 months of kitchen work at $18 per month. The wage ledger showed $72 earned. The store ledger charged her for food and bedding. Pike's private account added transportation, medical examination, contract renewal, guard fees, and a winter clothing advance she had never received. After 7 months of work, Lydia owed $93. June Mercer's record followed the same shape. Laundry wages appeared in one book and vanished in another beneath repeated charges. Miriam Cade, Clara said. Finch hesitated before finding the page. Rowan's sister had earned $108. Voss had credited her with $41. The rest disappeared beneath medicine, security, meals, replacement linens, and a fee for retrieval after attempted abandonment. Clara's stomach tightened. How much was the retrieval fee? $28. Her mother's book recorded no transport on that date, only a notation. Miriam returned on foot with split boots. No wagon sent. They charged her for being dragged back when she returned herself. Finch stared at the page. Yes. Did you know? I knew the account. I did not know the truth beneath each line. You knew the lines never ended. His face reddened. Yes. Clara closed the book. Then that is what you testify to. Finch looked toward the room where Rowan lay. Voss will say I stole records. You did. He will say I altered them. Did you? No. Then let him say it before Judge Hale. I may not live to reach her. Samuel Dade did not live because he tried alone. Clara opened the book again. You are not alone now. By afternoon, Rowan's fever broke. Clara found him awake, his injured arm bound across his chest. Snowlight filled the room. He looked worn down to the parts of himself he usually kept hidden. May says you tried to get up, Clara said. May exaggerates. She moved your boots to the kitchen. That seems unnecessary. She knows you. Clara placed a cup of broth beside him. He drank because she waited. When he finished, she set Miriam's account on the blanket. I did not read it to hurt you. You read it because it matters. The books say she tried to leave. She did. What happened? His gaze moved to the frosted window. I found her at Black Vein during the first hard winter. Voss would not release the account, so I guided his ore trains for 6 months in exchange for her papers. You paid the debt. I thought I did, but Pike renewed it, called her absence a breach, added retrieval and legal fees. Clara waited. Miriam walked out during a storm, Rowan said. No coat worth naming. Boots split at both heels. She reached the lower creek before I found her. The book says she returned. I carried her back to the guide cabin because it was closer than the pass. Voss counted that as returning to work. His voice remained steady until the next breath. She had fever by morning. I got her off the mountain 3 days later. May kept her alive through winter. But not after. No. Clara knew before he said more. She died in spring. Her lungs never healed. The grief in him was not sharp. Sharp things cut and passed. This had settled into bone. You built the shelter after. Yes. You followed Voss's accounts because of her. Yes. And you offered me your name because you saw the same trap. At first. Clara held still. What changed? You did. He looked at her fully. I wanted to stop Voss from taking another woman. Then you wrote terms I had not thought to offer. You carried records I did not know existed. You led me through a mountain I was supposed to know better than you. That last part sounds wounded pride. It is mostly wounded shoulder. Despite herself, she smiled. It faded when he said, My reasons are not clean, Clara. I want those women free. I also want Voss to know who destroyed him. Because of Miriam. Yes. Wanting justice for someone you love does not spoil the evidence. It can spoil the person using it. Then do not use me as revenge. His jaw tightened. I would not. Good. Do not use Lydia or June either. They decide what they risk. Rowan nodded. That is the line. A wagon reached May's yard near sunset. Owen went out with a rifle. May followed with a lantern. Clara stood at the window until 2 women climbed down beneath blankets. The first was broad-shouldered and dark-haired, perhaps 30, with a burn scar across one hand. The second was younger, and thin enough that her borrowed coat hung loose from her frame. May brought them inside. This is Lydia Snow, she said, and June Mercer. The names from the ledgers became people. Lydia surveyed the room before removing her gloves. June stayed near the door. We were at Cedar Gap, Lydia said. Marshal Larkin sent word before he rode south. You left Black Vein? Clara asked. Months ago. I left, Lydia corrected. June escaped. June's fingers tightened in her coat. Different methods, Lydia said. Same direction. Clara did not ask for details yet. She placed bread, stew, and coffee on the table. June ate slowly at first, then with the concentrated silence of someone who had learned food could be removed without warning. Lydia noticed the labor books. Those are his. Yes. How? Abel Finch carried them out. Finch stood near the stove. Some of them. Lydia's expression turned hard. You worked the account window. Yes. You told me I owed for a doctor I never saw. I entered what Pike sent. That was not my question. Finch swallowed. Yes, I told you. Lydia took one step toward him. Clara did not interfere. I spent 11 months thinking I had counted wrong, Lydia said. I counted every plate I washed, every sack of potatoes, every hour. You looked at the paper and told me numbers do not care what I remember. I was wrong. You were safe. Yes. The word stopped her more effectively than an excuse. June spoke from the table. My account says I received cash wages. Finch looked down. Did you? Clara asked. Not once. They paid in Voss notes. The store took 10 cents from every dollar when we used them. Clara found June's page. The wage ledger listed dollars. The store book listed company notes. Pike's private account treated the difference as another advance. 3 books. 3 versions of the same work. And when a woman refused a renewed term, Clara asked. Her room was locked from outside, June said. Her voice was rough from disuse, but steady. Meals were charged, even when they were withheld. Guard time was added to the debt. Finch closed his eyes. You entered those charges? Lydia asked. Some. How many? I do not know. You knew enough to stop counting. Yes. The case changed again. It was no longer only about proving old theft. The books had been used to turn punishment into debt, and debt into permission. Clara drew the ledgers toward the center of the table. We can take these to Judge Hale. Finch can explain the three-account method. I can connect the freight weights and repeated charges. But no one uses your names without permission. Lydia sat across from her. What happens if we give permission? Voss learns where you are. Pike will call you thieves, drunks, liars, or women who agreed and later regretted it. He already called me worse. You may have to say what happened in a public room. June's face closed. Clara continued. You may choose a written statement instead. Or no statement. The books still exist. Will the judge free the women still there? June asked. If she believes the debts were manufactured, she can order the contracts suspended while the accounts are examined. Can, Lydia said. Not will. No, not will. Clara would not sell certainty the way Pike sold mercy. Lydia looked toward Rowan's room. Cade married you to get you out? He gave me a legal obstacle Voss could not move quickly. And what did it cost? Terms I wrote. Work we agreed on. Nothing else. June studied Clara's face as if searching for the hidden fee. There is always something else, she said. There was a lock on my room. The only key was mine. June looked down at her bowl. Lydia opened the ledger to her account. This says I received $12 in winter clothing. Did you? One pair of used gloves. Clara wrote beside the line. Value? Maybe 50 cents. June moved closer. Together they went through the books. Lydia remembered delivery dates, meal counts, and the names of supervisors. June knew which women had been moved between kitchens, laundries, and boarding houses, and which charges appeared after they resisted new terms. Finch identified the pages Pike had summarized and the ones Voss signed himself. Clara built a new index. Not victims, witnesses. Not shame, corroboration. Near midnight, June placed one finger beside the line that claimed she had received cash. I will speak, she said, but the judge stops the contracts before Voss moves the women or changes the books. We will put that in the opening request. No, June's voice strengthened. Not after the history. First. Clara met her gaze. First. Lydia pushed her account across the table. Use my name. Finch sat down heavily. And mine, he said. Lydia's expression remained cold. Your name was already in it. Yes, he said. This time I will put it there myself. Clara wrote their decisions on a clean sheet and left space beneath each for a signature. Then she went to Rowan's room. He was awake. How many? He asked. 37 workers across the books, 11 women under household or laundry contracts, 7 whose terms were renewed without new signatures. Can Hale act? She can if we reach her, and if the road stays closed. We make the case ready enough that weather is the only thing left in our way. Rowan shifted, pain crossing his face. You should sleep. So should you. I have work. You have one functioning arm. I can read. Clara considered him. Then she brought the first copied ledger into the room and placed it on his lap. Names only. Mark every person you recognize. Do not write conclusions. Yes, ma'am. She turned toward the door. Clara. She stopped. Miriam would have liked you. The words touched something tender, but she did not let them become an obligation. I am sorry I never knew her. So am I. Clara returned to the kitchen. Lydia and June sat beside the stove, no longer guests waiting to be told what would happen. Finch sharpened pencils. May prepared clean paper. Owen watched the snow and calculated the first possible day a wagon could descend. Clara opened the black book beside the labor ledgers. She had escaped because one man gave her a name and enough time to act. The women still bound to Voss's accounts did not need husbands. They needed the machinery of the lie exposed so completely that no signature, real or forged, could hold them. Clara drew a line across the top of the new page. Petition concerning fraudulent labor accounts and unlawful confinement at Voss Consolidated Works. Below it, she wrote the first demand: immediate suspension of all disputed labor contracts and inspection of the Black Vein account books. Then she passed the paper to June. Read it, Clara said. Change anything that is not yours. Amos's package arrived with Deputy Marshal Larkin's return escort 3 days after the road reopened. It was wrapped in feed cloth and tied with baling twine. Clara recognized her father's knots. Inside lay the Mercy Ford Waybook. Not a copy. The original. Beneath it rested Amos's private debt ledger and a sealed letter. Clara knew the cracked green cover and the blue ink stain from the winter she turned 19. Removing it from the station meant Amos had surrendered the last thing Voss might still want from him. She broke the seal. Clara, I signed your name. Pike gave me your old copybook and showed me where to write. I knew the contract was not fair. I told myself you would work the debt down and return. The truth is, I tried to save the station with your life. Your mother began the black book after she found Voss changing freight weights. She made me promise to keep the public way book because the two together would show the difference. I broke every part of that promise except the hiding place. The true ore tallies are marked with a small cross beneath the wagon number. Pike's replacement pages have no cross. Voss has the station. He offered me a room if I testified that you signed willingly. I refused. That does not make me a good father. It is only the first honest thing I have done in a long while. I will come to Fort Redstone if Judge Hale calls me. Do not return for the station. There is nothing there worth being traded for twice. Amos Bellamy. Clara read it twice. No plea for forgiveness. No whiskey offered as excuse. No demand that better years erase the worst one. Only fact. Only consequence. Rowan sat near the stove with his wounded arm in a sling. You do not have to decide anything about him today. I have decided. May, Lydia, June, and Finch waited around the table. He tells the truth before Hale, Clara said. That is what I require from him. And after? May asked. After is not part of this case. She opened the way book. Small pencil crosses appeared beneath certain wagon numbers. Clara placed her mother's black book beside it and matched the first date. Mercy Ford recorded 1,800 pounds. Black Vein claimed 2,400. The difference entered workers' accounts as loss, handling, and transport. A food shipment valued at $60 became $94 at the mine. Medicine supplied from station stock became separate debt for 6 women. Every false increase rested beside an honest number her mother had preserved. Finch leaned over the pages. This proves the mine totals were altered before they reached my summaries. Can you identify Pike's replacement sheets? Clara asked. Yes, different ruling, different ink, and signatures copied from monthly reports. Lydia touched one entry. They said our kitchen lost 2 flour sacks that week. The station shipped all 12, Clara said. We were charged for 14. June's laugh held no humor. They stole 2 sacks that never existed. They worked through the afternoon. By supper, they had linked 23 altered freight entries to labor charges in the Black Vein books. 7 carried Voss's approval, 9 bore Pike's initials, 4 connected directly to Lydia, June, or Miriam. Larkin returned after dark, his injured ankle stiff but usable. He read Amos's confession beneath the lamp. Judge Hale issued a temporary order, he said. No disputed worker may be moved from Black Vein before the hearing. June closed her eyes. Did Voss obey? Clara asked. He moved no one openly. When is the hearing? 5 days. Fort Redstone is 3 days in winter, 2 with the lower coach road cleared. We leave at dawn. Rowan pushed himself forward. May pointed a wooden spoon at him. You are not riding anywhere. I can sit a horse. You can also open that shoulder and die from stubbornness. Clara faced him. He hated being left behind. She could see it in the set of his jaw. You should stay. His gaze held hers. Do you want me to? The question was not about the trail. Clara thought of gratitude, protection, and the danger of mistaking either for a promise she had not made. I want you alive, she said, and I want you at the hearing, if May says the wound will hold. May considered him. 2 days, then a wagon, not a horse. Rowan nodded. Clara turned to Larkin. Lydia, June, Finch and I leave tomorrow. You carry copies. I carry the originals. May keeps another set. And Amos? She asked. I sent the summons through Mercy Ford. Clara placed her father's confession inside the public way book. For years, Amos had taught her that a family name could become a debt. Rowan had shown her a name could become shelter. Now her father had given her something smaller and harder than either. Evidence. It did not repair what he had broken. It did not need to. By midnight, the records were packed in oilskin and the witness statements signed. Clara locked the originals inside Larkin's travel chest and kept the key. At dawn, she would ride toward Fort Redstone not as Amos Bellamy's daughter, not merely as Rowan Cade's wife, and not as the woman Gideon Voss had failed to collect. She would go as the keeper of the numbers he had counted on no one comparing. Gideon Voss was waiting inside Judge Hale's courtroom when Clara reached Fort Redstone. He stood beside a polished table in a black wool coat, with Edwin Pike and the lawyer Cyrus Vale at his shoulders. No deputy held his arm. Power had taught him to enter judgment as though he owned the room. Judge Miriam Hale sat beneath the territorial seal, her blackthorn cane against the bench. Clara Bellamy Cade? She asked. Yes. Bring the records forward. Before Larkin could open the travel chest, Voss set a leather sack on the table and emptied it. Gold struck wood in a bright, heavy stream. $1,000 for Mrs. Cade, he said. The Bellamy debt erased. Restitution for Lydia Snow and June Mercer. Their contracts released. No claim against Abel Finch. In exchange, this petition is withdrawn. Hale's face remained still. You offer settlement in open court? I prevent needless ruin. Clara studied the coins. Does it release the women still at Black Vein? The petition does not require every worker's involvement. Then it buys 3 silences and leaves the rest owing you." Voss smiled. "Everyone has a price. My father believed that." Clara pushed the gold back with the forged contract. "Rowan Cade did not buy me. He gave me time, shelter, and a name Voss could not move quickly. What I did with that time is mine." She placed the black book beside the Mercy Ford Way ledger. "My answer is no." Hale tapped her cane. "Proceed." Clara showed the honest weights marked by her mother's crosses, the larger figures entered at Black Vein, and the repeated fees that turned wages into debt. Finch explained the 3-account system and identified Voss's approvals. Lydia described 11 months of kitchen labor that increased what she owed. June described cash wages that existed only on paper, and a room locked from the outside after she refused a renewed term. Cyrus Vale called them confused and resentful. Then Amos Bellamy entered. His coat was borrowed. He carried no bottle. Hale placed him under oath. "Did your daughter sign the labor contract?" "No." "Who did?" "I did." Pike rose. "Under pressure from whom?" Amos faced him. "From my debt and my cowardice. You showed me where to write. The hand was mine." Clara felt no relief. Only a fact finally set where everyone could see it. Vale demanded proof that the Black Vein ledgers had not been altered. Finch pointed to the binding. Mine stamps, Pike's initials, and Voss's signatures. Voss surged to his feet. "This hearing rests on stolen property." He seized the labor ledger nearest the stove. Rowan moved from the rear bench, one arm still bound beneath his coat, but Larkin reached Voss first. Voss tore out a page and thrust it into the flame. Fire climbed the paper. Judge Hale watched it blacken. "Mrs. Cade?" Clara opened May's copied set. Page 112. Copied at Donnelly Ranch before the original entered Fort Redstone. Another copy is held by Marshal Larkin. She read the burned entry aloud. June Mercer's false cash wages, Pike's security fee, and Voss's approval. Voss stared at the ash. What he meant to destroy had become evidence that he feared the record. Hale rose, leaning on the cane she did not need. "This court finds sufficient evidence of forgery, fraudulent accounting, unlawful confinement, destruction of evidence, and coordinated violence to require criminal inquiry." She suspended every disputed labor contract and ordered that no Black Vein worker be prevented from leaving. Voss's county accounts, mine shipments, company store, and freight assets were frozen for restitution. Pike was barred from the records. Warrants were issued for Boyd Rusk and for Voss in connection with Samuel Dade's death and the C7 ambush. Vale objected. Hale struck the floor with her cane. "Object again after your client stops feeding the court evidence." Deputies moved in. For the first time, Voss looked at Clara without calculation. He had encountered something he could neither purchase nor enter in a column. Hale lifted the marriage record. The Cade marriage was freely entered and is recognized. The Bellamy labor contract is forged and unenforceable. Clara touched the key in her pocket. The ruling did not give her a life. It returned the right to build one. Outside, Fort Redstone's bells marked noon. Lydia took June's hand. Finch lowered his head. Amos stood alone beside the witness rail. Rowan came to Clara's side, but did not touch her. "Is it done?" he asked. "The contract is." "And Voss?" She watched the deputies close the irons around his wrists. Now he enters the account. The legal consequences did not arrive all at once. Rusk was captured near Black Vein. Pike was arrested at the rail depot. Voss remained in Fort Redstone while auditors froze his accounts. Lydia joined a Cedar Gap boarding house. June became a clerk for Judge Hale. Finch testified. Amos lost Mercy Ford and left the county. Clara answered his letter. You told the truth when it cost you. That is a beginning, not forgiveness. By spring, Clara was back at Rowan's cabin. Her room remained locked and her key still fit. One evening, Rowan placed a signed dissolution petition beside her bread dough. The filing fee is paid. You can leave with your money and your name. He had kept the final term. Gratitude looked backward at rescue. What Clara felt looked toward a life not yet built. She fed the petition into the stove. Be certain, Rowan said. I am. Because I helped you? Because you knew when to stop helping. She offered her hand. He waited. May I? Yes. By June, a bakery and supply post stood beside the East Trail, beneath a sign. Bellamy and Cade. Bread, freight, and mountain supplies. Clara kept the books. Rowan kept the road open. Neither kept a hidden account. One morning, Etta Bloom arrived with a flour sack. I heard you hire help. Clara remembered the old manifest. She wrote down Etta's wages, showed her an upstairs room, and placed a brass key in her palm. The bolt is on the inside. No one else has a key. Below them, bread rose. Outside, snowmelt carried winter from the yard. Rowan's name had given Clara shelter before sundown. The life she chose afterward was freedom.